shadows, I still see the sunshine bright. The warmth is all around me. The power of all life keeps me warm. I said the power of all life keeps me warm. So warm, like the fire within, to keeping me warm. So warm. Sunshine on my shoulders, sunshine on my face, sunshine all around me keeps me warm. Comes up in the morning, goes down in the west, and every day's coming up in the morning. And I can count on you like I count on the sun, and I will rest in you like I rest in the sun. Keep me warm, oh Lord, keep me warm, so warm. And I can count on you like I count on the sun, and I will rest in you like I rest in the sun. The sun, keep me warm, Lord, keep me warm. Light the fire within to keep me warm. Keep me warm. Light the fire to keep me warm. Shine your light to keep me warm. Keep me warm. So warm, oh Lord. To keeping me warm. Thank you.
So there's this taxi driver, and he's got a passenger in the back of his taxi and taking this person to the train station off on their travels. But the passenger in the back of the taxi has a question. So he leans forward behind the driver and he gently reaches and just taps him on the shoulder. Well, the driver gets startled. He's startled to death. He even screams, and all of a sudden he loses control of the taxi cab, and he almost hits a bus, and then he swerves, and he gets up on the curb, and all of a sudden he comes to a screeching stop in front of a big glass pane window. And for a couple of moments, there's silence. And he turns to the passenger and he goes, "I am so sorry. Are you okay?" And the passenger says, yeah, I'm okay, but I'm sorry. I didn't mean to startle you. I didn't realize a simple tap on the back of your shoulder like that would startle you so much." And the driver says, "Oh no, trust me, it's all my fault. I'm so sorry. This is my first day driving a taxi cab. For the last 25 years, I drove a hearse." Was not expecting a tap from the back in a hearse. Welcome, August, the first Sunday of August. Where did the summer go? Yeah. And so as Linda said, our value this month is spiritual living through love, compassion, and caring. We embrace love as the self-givingness of God to all creation, moving through us into expression and compassion, caring, mutual respect, and kindness. We express interest in the support for the well-being of ourselves and others. We express unconditional love when observing suffering of others. And what can we do to give aid and show compassion? So our topic today is compassion in action. How can we put that into our life? And how does that show up, not only for ourselves, but with others? Thomas Merton, modern mystic, monk, social activist, among many other things, says the whole idea of compassion is based on a keen awareness of the interdependence of all living beings, which are all part of one another and all involved in one another. So everything is connected. From a science of mind point of view, we like to kind of bring all this together. We believe in the oneness of all life. I say it every week, and I will continue to say it every week. When we live from that knowing that there's a natural compassion that awakens in our minds and hearts towards life. In the world of cause and effect, this natural compassion becomes the cause for new ideas and actions for ourselves and others, and the effect of that lifts our consciousness, and when we do this for others, it lifts their consciousness and the consciousness of all. 2 quotes by Ernest Holmes to get started. From the Science of Mind, he says, "Life is a mirror and will reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it." When we have that consciousness of compassion and kindness and caring for others, and that's really our thought and what we live from, we are putting it out there in that energetic field, and that comes back to us, not only in action, but in the whole awareness of consciousness. From Living the Science of Mind, Dr. Holmes says, "Realizing that I am one with all people, I affirm that there is a silent power flowing through me and them, which blesses and heals and prospers, making happy and glad their pathway." There are 2 ideas of compassion that I'm going to speak about. One is compassion and suffering, and the other is compassion in action, social activism. So I have to say that compassion and suffering, for a long time, was the only view that I knew about compassion. When someone was hurting, we worked with them and did what we could for them. And so I want to thank Linda for her reading today from the Dalai Lama. The work of his life has been about compassion, and he's written so many books about compassion. But he is Buddhist, and the Buddhist tradition is that it is difficult to let go of suffering itself. It's one of the underlying things of life itself. So we will have suffering. So we don't let go of that suffering, but we must learn to let go of the desires that we have in our life and the desires and attachments to what brings the suffering. And so when you can do that, then you are free and find liberation. That's a good spiritual practice, and that's a life practice. But here's another description. Compassion literally means to suffer together, and is defined by the feeling that arises when you're confronted with another person's suffering and you feel motivated to help them with whatever they're suffering about. Don't we feel pulled when we see somebody in pain and we want to go help them? But biologically, compassion and suffering are actually linked together. We have a visceral effect in our body. For when we see someone in suffering, we begin to feel that compassion. Our heart rate calms down. We release that bonding hormone, oxytocin. Our brain starts to light up in empathy centers, caring. And even that center, that's a pleasure center, believe it or not. So for some of us, when we have that whole visceral effect happening, we see somebody in suffering, we go into reaction mode and we want to help them and be there for them. And so it's actually a chemical thing that happens with us. I stated a moment ago that compassion grows from the truth of oneness. If we're connected to everything and they're hurting, are we hurting? And so we have that effect. But the core of religious science, actually, our teaching can be kind of cold. Our teaching gives us the idea that suffering is a matter of perception and how we are reacting to something or handling something within our thought and within inside. So someone going through an extreme situation in the moment may not think about that at the time. They may not feel good about that. But Ernest Holmes says in the very beginning of Science of Mind that suffering, among other experiences, is not God-ordained. Therefore, it is experienced out of ignorance. He likes to use that word, but I'll just say it's experienced out of unknowing, another way. So, yep, that can be a little cold. And in our teaching and through the practice of our teaching, we can arrive at a new conclusion. So with the truth that Spirit has never let go of us, the truth that Spirit is in constant givingness in our lives to help, to guide, to heal, and support us, we can make a change in our lives. And that's that change your thinking, change your life. So we don't have to be in suffering if we have a practice and a toolbox that helps us move through it. Or at least I can say it helps us move through it a little easier. If we move further into the Science of Mind book, there's a chapter on faith. And within that chapter, a section titled Misplaced Faith. Dr. Holmes states that the world is suffering actually from one big fear. The fear that God will not answer our prayers. And our prayers are about all kinds of things, the fears in our lives. It can be about loss. It can be about lack, loss of love, money, death, illness, survival, supply, you name it. Whatever you're needing or calling or drawing from into your heart and your body that isn't showing up for you in your life, that's what you're needing and that's what you're wondering. Will God answer your prayer? Some may say, does God exist? So, that fear of that God will, there's a fear that what we teach about God may not actually be what we claim and what shows up. And when we're in fear, we are actually experiencing duality. There are two gods when that happens, a God of faith and a God of fear. But we teach there's only one God, and it is the God of love and the God of the Creator that supports us and is there for us. So fear can be misplaced if we have that strong passion of fear. Faith is misplaced when we have that passion in fear, and we want to bring it back to love. Almost on a planetary level, so much of the world right now, the population has an understanding that God's not there for them, that they don't know what's going to happen in their lives, and what's going to heal them and support them really is just the next person who puts a coin in the can, or maybe it's the Red Cross or someone or some other helping hand organization. And actually, thank God those organizations are there, because there are things happening spur of the moment where people need help and support. And those helpers and workers show up. They're like angels in those people's lives, and they bring their compassion. So we're glad they're there, because everybody needs something or someone at some moment in their life. But what if we did not have the fear? What if instead we had that strong positive faith and the integrity of the universe and the good of God, that Spirit is always present, always showing up somewhere, somehow, in the face of an angel that stands before you? What if we actively practiced and lived the faith all the time that God is present and that God answers? What would suffering look like? What would your life look like? What would be different? What if those who lived that way worked from that in compassion for others that don't know that that way of life exists? And we could be their angel. Breath. So let me move to the other phase of compassion. There's a new focus of compassion that is working with social justice. Social justice is a new focus term right now. There are some ministers who are even doing a new focus ministry on just that itself, because there's so much happening in the world right now. There are a lot of injustices that individuals are facing because of race or color or culture, faith, age, oh my gosh, economics, environment, class, almost anything you can think of is almost being touched nowadays in some kind of what we might call injustice. And as I make that list, please know I certainly don't make light of any of it, because it's serious. So I want to bring up the name Matthew Fox. Is that a familiar name for some people? Do some reading with him. He's a fascinating individual, has this thing called creative spirituality. So even at the Parliament last year, if any of you were able to experience, he did a creative spirituality process that was just amazing. So he's written a lot of books. So here's one of his books is titled Spirituality Named Compassion. A spirituality named compassion, uniting mystical awareness with social justice. That's an interesting mingling, isn't it? The mystical awareness with social justice. He defines compassion as creativity put to the service of justice, and argues that we can achieve compassion for both humanity and the environment as we recognize the interconnectedness of all things. Sound familiar? Yeah. It's almost as if there's this umbrella of this consciousness, I will say, and this wave of this idea of oneness and at least the idea of interconnectedness that is really showing up in a whole lot of places that we don't realize. This book was written, now I forget, I was going to say late 70s, but it may be sooner than that. And he says, if we can work towards the creation of a gentler ecological and feminist Christianity, we will realize that spirituality's purpose is to guide us on a path that leads to genuine love and care of all. Isn't that beautiful? That's everything. On a world scale, compassion seems to be on the sidelines, exiled, he puts it, because the imbalances of wealth, of healthcare, of pollution, of population, of hunger, the mechanization of medicine, and the haves and the have-nots. Things are out of balance. Compassion is the action of God, and God's compassion is spirituality itself. He talks about the teachings of Jesus and the way of life, compassion as a way of life, which actually stems from the core of Judaism and how Jesus was raised as a child. But this is not a book on religion. In fact, he takes religion apart. I think he likes to do that. He takes religion apart and separates the fact that the universe is actually taken out of religion and what happens in most churches on Sunday morning. So this is a book about creating the path back to remembering that everything is connected. It's time to get off the walls of division, come down to earth, take care of each other and everything on the planet, because it's all God. The act of compassion is not pity for someone else who's suffering. That is actually duality. He states that compassion is the celebration of the unity in life. It is celebrating being connected to the one that you are in service to and celebrating the act of service itself. It's a little different, and it's good. So let me give you some examples. I'll tell you a story. Gandhi's successor was a gentleman named Vinoba, and I may not pronounce his name correctly. Maybe someone else knows how to do that. I will say Vinoba as it's spelled. And he took over in 1948 during the time that there was a lot of struggle in India and a lot of struggle between landowners and the rich people, and there was an army of poor villagers and communists. Around 1951, the government decided to step in and kind of take some control, and of course, they made it worse. So there was a lot of injustice going on with rich landowners and the homeless. And Vinoba wanted to do something about this. He wanted to find a way to end the conflict. So he set out personally with a few of his workers, and they set out on foot to visit the villages. So the first village he goes to, there's a group of people called the Untouchables, and we all know what those are. There's so many classes of people there, and there's these untouchables that really can't get support that they need. So they've been taken over by the communists because they don't have anywhere else to go. They approach Vinoba and they ask him to speak to the government on their behalf. Will the government help them and give them land? And Vinoba responds by saying, what use is government help until we can help ourselves? So he takes this into his spiritual practice. Later, he decides to have a prayer meeting, and thousands of people show up, a few more than he expected. Without really thinking about it, without really even expecting a response, he asked the question, are there any friends here among you who will help our people, our other friends, the untouchables? And unexpectedly, a farmer stands up and donates 100 acres of land. This was unheard of at the time. The Untouchables, in their relief and their gratitude, only took what they needed, which was 80 acres, and they were very grateful for that. But Vinoba felt like this was a sign from God, and it was a solution to the region's turmoil. Eventually, Vinoba and his workers ended up collecting over 100,000 acres of land for the homeless. And it became what's known as the land gift, if I pronounce Buhudin. The land gift. So it is in action. And so he created this process. I love this because this was compassion in action. It was everybody working together, and it came from spirit and prayer. And not only did he help them in the moment with something that was critical and happening, but he taught them how to take care of themselves into the future, and then how to be compassionate towards each other. I think that's a great story. Let me tell you a story that is happening right now. And this is a story that you all may have, you may have heard. It went viral this past week. But I want to ask you a question first. Is a simple act of kindness compassion in action? So there's a young mother taking a vacation by herself to kind of get away from the kids, and she's on Alaskan Airlines, and she is settling down in her seat. It's 5:45 in the morning, the plane is full, and the flight's been delayed. Not fun. All of a sudden, babies are crying. And there's just a few rows behind her, there's a mother by herself, but she has a baby in her lap, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. Sound like fun? So the babies are crying. The 3-year-old has a meltdown, is kicking the seat in front of her. We all know what that feels like. And this first woman is watching everybody's reaction about this. What are they doing? Well, they're all, they're holding their ears. They're complaining about the kids. Why won't the kids shut up? What kind of mother is that? She can't discipline her kids. The lady who's sitting in the seat, the 3-year-old's, banging the seat, actually turns around and grabs the child. And at this point, this mother who's watching just gets up out of her seat. And she walks the few rows back, and she says, "Can I help you?" And the mother immediately hands her the baby. And it's funny, I've thought about that at times, but I didn't know if it was politically correct to go do anything. But this woman has the spirit, and she gets up and she takes this baby, and she stands there and starts rocking the baby in the aisle, and then she has to sit down because the plane's ready to take off. And as she sits there, the baby begins to quiet and settle and falls asleep. And then the mother is able to take care of the 3-year-old and gets her happy. And then all of a sudden, there's peace in that part of the plane. So I want to end with telling you the closing point of this author's story. She put it on Facebook, and it's viral through a couple other places. And this is what she says. Be nice. Stop it. She says, be nice and considerate. If someone needs help, for God's sake, help them. Complaining, mumbling doesn't do anything except make the person who needs the help feel worse, because words hurt. How can we ignore a human in distress? Please be kind. Please be considerate. Help one another. It makes everything easier. I promise you, you won't die. Hashtag love what matters. So this week, love what matters. Don't be afraid to take action to help someone and support someone in what's important for them, because it's really about all of us. Right? Yes. Okay. So I invite our practitioners forward, and let's take this whole idea into prayer. For our visitors today, I want you to know that this prayer is delivered in the first person. So as you hear the words, please take them in as your own. And if you need to interpret a little bit, please do so you can get the effect of the words. It is spoken as an affirmative prayer with our good already happening in the moment. And at the end, we claim our good as done by saying together, and so it is. Yeah. So let's go into that space within. I breathe in this energy and light of life, for I recognize that there is one essence of love and joy and compassion and caring and good that celebrates itself within every individual in this space. Today, I know that I celebrate my oneness with all of life. I bring compassion into action in this day, and love becomes my way. I send out my heart of love and service, just even energetically, to all people that I meet today and every day during this week. How can I be of service? How can I take care of myself? Because when I take care of myself, I take care of others, and I lift the space. Life is a blessing. I know that I am never alone, for that which has made me, that which has created me, goes with me everywhere I am. And so I am always cared for, and I open to the wisdom and the guidance within, knowing that every step I take is already prepared in my life and for those that I love. I give thanks for the gift today of Spirit. I give thanks for all that has come into this space. I give thanks for the expression that unfolds throughout this week. And I know that all is good. I give great blessings to the teachers that are here, to the ministers, and to the teachers, rabbis, ministers everywhere in the world, to our leaders of this country. And allow them and ask that Spirit bless them and guide them and speak loud, knowing that the world is a place of good and that the world can be that place that is lifted and that place of love, and that that is what is coming. And so I give thanks for that. In great joy, in great gratitude, I release this word into the law, into that mechanics that makes it so, and by the very power of the word, Spirit is present in that. And so claiming this, knowing the good of it, taking it into our hearts and letting it be as our lives, together we say, and so it is.